Welcome to Alan Skorsky Reports. I'm Alan Skorsky. We begin today's show grieving over the return of 4 dead bodies that were held hostage in Gaza for over 500 days. They were supposed to be 83-year-old Oded Lifshitz, Shiri Bibas, and her 2 beautiful boys, Ariel and baby Kfir. Tonight, it was revealed that the Hamas terrorists filled the coffin meant for Shiri Bibas with that of another dead hostage yet to be identified. May their memories be a blessing. Following the October 7th, 2023 invasion of Israel by Muslim-Brotherhood Hamas terrorists, America saw a new wave of violent anti-Semitism, but nowhere was it more virulent than on college campuses, particularly on some of America's most prominent universities. When called before Congress, the presidents of Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, and MIT twisted themselves into pretzels trying to answer if calls for Israel's destruction is considered anti-Semitism. The ADL has graded 85 American universities for their policies to protect Jewish students from anti-Semitism on campus. It gave Harvard and 12 other schools an F. Just 2 schools got an A. Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism, whose acronym is MACA, founded by today's guest, Elizabeth Rand, started as a grassroots movement following the October 7 terrorist attacks in Israel and the subsequent rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses. On MACA's Facebook page, there is a post about the student government at San Jose State University demanding that they and all California universities suspend their relationship with Haifa University. Also on the MACA Facebook page, from Swarthmore University, Students for Justice in Palestine takes over a campus building. Another recent post, open letter from Israeli Columbia students, postdocs, and alumni against deportations. MACA has grown exponentially and now has more than 60,000 members. MACA's mission is to secure the safety of Jewish students through advocacy, education, and calls to action. Elizabeth Rand was recently recognized as being one of the 50 most influential Jewish activists. Elizabeth Rand, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. So first, the first question is always going to ask, what made you start this? How did you become the behemoth that you became? It's very nice to have an idea, to be passionate about something, but to build a force into over 60,000 members is really a feat that most people cannot do themselves.
Good question. Probably I was just in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time. I guess it depends how you want to look at it. Before October 7th, I was in a number of different Jewish Facebook groups, just ordinary groups. And there was one in particular called Mothers of the Tribe. And it was prior to October 7th. It was a group that was created, not by me, by someone. And it was for the parents of kids who are like late teens, early 20s. So like the end of high school, early college. And the group was really benign. It was talking about SAT scores and Jewish fraternities and sororities and Jewish life on different campuses and, just AP credits, just very benign stuff. And so I was in there and I noticed that right after October 7th, the whole tone of that group changed. And it was days and days and weeks of people posting about what was going on campuses, which seemed to really happen overnight. I mean, it seemed like 1 minute there was October 7th, and the next minute there was, pro-Palestinian demonstrations. So I read through these posts for about 3 weeks. And at the end of October, I decided that I wanted to do something about it. I thought we can't just sit here and, read about it and complain on Facebook. So I created this group. I modeled it after Mothers Against Drunk Driving, hence the name, because it really was created by and for, ordinary moms. And my son at the time was a senior in high school. He was applying to colleges. So this was on my mind, and I always say, had he been much younger or older, I don't think that it would have caught my attention in quite the way it did. Yet he was going through the college application process at that time. So I had the idea to form this group, and I did. And it just took off. By the end of the first weekend, I started on a Thursday. I think by Sunday I had 10,000 people. By the end of the first week, I think I had like 43,000. Now I've got almost 62,000. Um, and my idea was to turn it into a 501(c)(3), which I did. I filed the papers in May 2024. We were accepted in December. Um, and because I thought to really be on the level playing field with other big Jewish organizations, we had to be something more than a Facebook group. I didn't want to come to the table as just, yeah, well, we're a Facebook group. So we went through that whole process, and yeah, it's kind of a shock to me. I thought that we would, the day I started it, I thought, maybe I'll have a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 tops, and it exploded. It's a little hard to say why. I guess maybe my voice was a little different. I didn't come from this world at all. I was not an activist. I really was not even in any, particularly Jewish world. I was just, I guess, really just a concerned mother. And I also thought that not only are we parents, but we're consumers. And that's an angle that I really didn't see anybody discuss, right? Like, we are not just parents, but paying for this. We're paying a fortune for these for college education, right? And you could spend $300,000 on a college education these days. And I thought there's really like nothing else in the world that I could think of that you're going to spend $300,000 on and not have a say in. I don't want to give, tens of thousands of dollars to a school, where my kid is going to be taught by radical professors. And that's actually, to me, I think a bigger concern than the students. The students, you could write them off to some extent as being young and naive and, listening to TikTok and whatnot. But when you have like Harvard professors who
Right.
really, you think these people are at the top of their intellectual game, yelling that Israel's committing genocide. I mean, it's horrible. And yeah, it's been pretty challenging. We do a lot of letter writing campaigns, a lot of them. And most of the time when we write letters, the letters are not, we're not, sometimes we write them. Mostly we get them from other groups. We share letters from End Jew Hatred, Pens with Swords. And then what winds up happening is, an institution can get like 8,000, 10,000 letters. Sometimes they pay attention to that and
Right.
sometimes they don't. Um,
So here's what's interesting. We know there's certain people have become famous from this. I mean this in a positive way. Andrew Pessin, a number of years ago, I forgot what campus he came from, but he resigned because of the anti-Semitism. Shabbos Kestenbaum has become a super rock star, suing
yes,
Harvard
amazing.
University. I have friends whose sons went to Harvard, and I saw them on TV testifying before Congress. You've got philanthropists like Bill Ackman, who said that they're not gonna give money to these universities anymore. So one of the questions I had was, have you been in touch with any of them? Like what they're doing, you see what they're doing? Should we help you, or does everyone kind of have their own lane, do you think?
Shabbos Kestenbaum is in my group. Um, of those people that and Andrew Pessin actually was the one who nominated me for the I'm going to
Yeah.
say that correctly, Algerminer
Yeah.
Award. So I have, we will exchange messages. We immediately post all of his things every day. He's a huge contributor to MACA. He's just incredible. Shabbos Kestenbaum is in my group. I've never actually spoken to him.
Right.
Bill Ackman, I don't think, I am not on that level, right? Like I don't, I don't know. To me, I'm like just not on the level of those. The people that you just mentioned are like,
But let me tell you
okay.
something, and I believe this. When you go into activism, it's because you believe in something. There are no more levels. We're all in the same field. Some people might have more money, or some, might have more degrees. But when we're fighting to combat anti-Semitism and fighting against this rise of hatred against groups chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel," we're all on the same page.
I,
Listen, I've written letters to Robert Kraft. You know, he's the owner of the New England Patriots. It doesn't phase me because we're all fighting for the same battle. But Go ahead. You're going to say something.
No, I mean, look, I would love to. I think that what they have that I don't probably is time. Since I started this, I have a full-time job that this is not my job. It's sort of
Mm,
my side hustle, right?
mm,
So I wish that I could be out there doing this like 24/7. That is my dream. If I could
sure.
figure out how to make a living from this, or at least not start doing it, I would. Um, but to be out there in the way that like Shabbos Kestenbaum is, you've got to have a lot of time, and
Right.
I wish I had it.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I have never like Andrew Peston. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
spoken a few times, and that's it. Yeah,
Okay.
Shabbos Kestenbaum's in the group. We've never spoken. I'd be more than happy to
Yeah.
talk to him. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, I'm really in awe of everybody that you just mentioned. I'm really in awe of them. They're incredible.
yeah. So let me ask you another question. I grew up in Detroit. I went to
Hmm.
Wayne State University, about 15 minutes from Dearborn, Michigan, the famous Dearborn that has the largest Arab population outside the Middle East. But back when I was going to college, there were no cell phones, there were no WhatsApp groups. And it was a very different time as far as activism. Yes, they were just as vicious and hateful, but they didn't have the type of influence that they have now.
That's true.
Now, Palestinianism has been mainstreamed. Universities don't find them offensive. If they were white, then yes, they'd be Nazis. But because they're not white supremacists, therefore they now they're just expressing, their viewpoints. Um, of all the universities, have you found? I mean, we know about the prominent ones, the Columbias, because we live here in New York and the NYU's. Have you found any region where universities have a much bigger problem, whether it's from the students or from the faculty itself?
It's the ones that are on the East Coast and the West Coast. In other words, UCLA, Berkeley, like whole California state system,
Sure.
and the ones that are here. Columbia, CUNY, the entire CUNY system
Sure.
is full of rot. NYU, I think, is trying. Although I'm right at the moment, I'm persona non grata with NYU.
Good for you.
No, not really. I guess I don't know. About that whole brouhaha that happened in the New York Times article and the other article and this and that. I do think they're trying. I do think actually NYU is trying. But yeah, Columbia is like beyond redemption, and UCLA, Berkeley. I think that on both coasts, probably where you have the most liberal, type people. Also, the liberal East Coast, like Swarthmore and trying to think what Vassar, all that those sort of like
Right.
small liberal arts colleges,
Right.
those tend to be the worst. The ones that are the best are usually they're either down south, or some of them are in the Midwest. It sort of depends. Also, it's mutable. Something that was terrible last year is maybe not so terrible this year, vice versa. It depends a lot on the change of the guard. Do you have new people coming in and out? With Columbia, I was sort of optimistic maybe when they what is her name resigned, Sharif.
Yeah.
But yet it's still just a terrorist training camp. It just seems beyond redemption. But then there are schools that have really made an effort. University of Michigan, Tulane, Washington University, St. Louis. All of those schools are pretty good. University of Florida, the Florida system in general,
Sure.
pretty good. Dartmouth has been exemplary. Yeah, I don't know.
Exemplary.
Exemplary,
Yeah.
exemplary. And I only had one drink tonight.
Yeah.
Exemplary,
Right.
exemplary. So, it sort of depends. And yeah, there's no one answer except I guess I would say the East Coast, the East and the West Coasts, uh, are the worst. I guess they just get a lot of people, a lot of them from, liberal type institutions, and they're humongous,
Right.
and it's hard to really get anything done there. They're just
Right. So you also mentioned that you're very active with the letter writing campaigns, because I'm also on some WhatsApp groups and I see letters that are very well written and they're coming from different groups. But let's say in your case, in your example, How do you find out? Because America is a big country, you've got universities everywhere. How do different situations come to your attention? And then how do you decide the best course of action to respond to it?
So we've got a lot of members who are very active out there. I mean, just in their own lives, they let us know. I mean, I don't actually run the Facebook group. We have moderators who do that, and they're wonderful. I don't do that. I'm sort of like on the back end. I'm the one who turned this into a 501(c)(3), and we have a board, and I do fundraising and try to plan things. But these mothers are really, really aware of what's going on. So they will post something and they will ask, for us to help them. And you'll see that usually there's this like symbiosis. Like we get a lot of our letters from either End You Hatred or Pens with Swords. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And so usually like somebody might post that such and such is going on at, I don't know, Swarthmore, and we'll get a post about it. And at the exact same moment, we'll get, like I also am in the WhatsApp groups, and people will post the letters, and then everybody sort of comes together, and it goes out. It seems like it all sort of happens at once. We do have some internal letter writers that will do things. Um, yeah, and we also, one of the other things that we have is Maccabees on the Ground, which was founded by one of our members, Kara Silver, and I really like that. They actually go out to campuses, and they're out there with their signs and their shirts and their hats. And that really, they're not protesting, they're really just there to show support
Right.
for the students so that and the best example that I can give about how that works is, I was in Woodstock this summer, and there's a video of it on Mac about it's like walking with my husband, and we're walking along, and we come to the center of the town, and there are these guys out there with the, you know, Israel, goes Nazis and genocide, and whatever, and they have the flags, and these guys look like they're old, hippie types, they're like maybe 70, and they're there in Woodstock because they never left, and they've got the signs. So of course I've got to start up with them because that's what I do. So one thing leads to another, and we're all cursing at each other, and it's really unpleasant. Even though I did start up with them, but it's unpleasant. They're
Yeah.
screaming at them, and then I keep walking along, and then as I walk, this sort of the street kind of goes back, and there's this rotunda, and there's all of these people there with Israeli flags, tons of them just sitting there, and when I saw them, I thought, oh, it was such a relief. I just went over and we started talking, and it felt like I was breathing a sigh of relief
Right.
to
Sure.
see my, allies. And I wanted our students to have that same feeling. So these moms go out to campuses and they're really just standing there. Sometimes they're standing there with NJU Hatred, other groups, just so the students feel that there's somebody out there when this stuff is going on. Um, yeah, it's horrible. I try to remain optimistic. We have a new administration. I'm hoping, that will
Right.
also, I mean, especially today of all days, right? I mean, when you
Yeah.
see and you say to yourself, well, this is what, who these students are and these faculty, this is what they're, rallying for. This is
Yeah.
who they support. It's, it's, it's mind
Right.
boggling.
Because because it is we, like in life, I try to put myself in the other person's shoes. But those people, they don't have shoes. They're evil. Their DNA is evil. And you can't try to outsmart them because they operate on a very, very different level. They will deny what Hamas has themselves recorded and shown. But let me ask you another question. You had mentioned that you're persona non grata on NYU. And so I say kudos, good for you. Um, are there other campuses, let's say, was there something really spectacular that happened that you or your group responded to that made a difference and then you guys you scored one for the good guys? Um, any other situations where things did not work the way you wanted to? Tell us a little bit about that if you have any examples.
will tell you, I went to speak at the JNF conference in Dallas and in November. And this student came over to me and she was crying and she said that she was from the University of North Texas and that she had been trying for 3 years to get an SSI chapter at the University of North Texas. And she could not get, apparently you need a faculty advisor. And she had gone to like 50 professors, and it could be anybody. It could
Yeah.
be, you just have to be an employee of University of North Texas. You could be the janitor. You could be a cook. Couldn't get anybody. And she came up to me and she was, crying. And I talked to her a little bit, and I could not get this, out of my mind, like, oh, gee. And so I took her contact information and I thought, okay, I'm going to help this girl. And I went into Mecca and I asked for people who were, I think, parents, University of North Texas parents. And we formed this little WhatsApp group, maybe, 15, 20 parents. And we talked about, I mean, I don't know the faculty at UNT, but they did. And they kept going through people. And finally, somebody had an idea. There was a Jewish music professor who had not yet been approached. And they got the idea, maybe this person will do it. And he said yes. And now there is a picture of this girl and her friends, and they've got a big SSI table. And I was really, it's a small victory. And most of our victories, I think, are small.
Right.
I think the NYU thing, I do think, they started, there was a protest at the Bob's Library on December 11th. And I will say that they handled it well. They did call the police and they did suspend 13 students. And I think some of that had something to do with MACA. And I do think that I had some influence over that, even though, I was definitely a thorn in their side. My son goes there and I was a thorn in their side. But I do think that that had something to do with it. I was, in their face a lot. So there's things like that. I know that we have a moderator who works all the time with the University of Michigan. I'm going to have to look at my notes here.
That's
Because
okay.
like I said, I'm not involved in these like day-to-day, very rarely am I involved too much in the day-to-day situations at these schools. I spend most of my time trying to make plans for us and to do things beyond what we're doing. So I'm going to have to give you a very short answer to that. But there are these little victories all the time. We have, a lot of this stuff, I see a lot of these things where, students want to have these divestment, they want to have,
BDS.
which, actually, I really don't even understand that because most states have laws against that. So it
Right.
seems like cosplay, we're going to get together and we're going to vote that our school divest from Israel. And we have been successful in getting the schools to not do that. I
Right.
mean, it's just the whole thing is so outrageous and seems so,
But though for them, remember,
insane.
for them, it's a symbolic victory, even if
That's
the
right.
state, had law against it, but that they can say that they pressured the university to capitulate to them. That's a victory. And see, they play the long game. They can say today we'll get the university. Next time it'll be the city council, and up and up and up. And again, all of this is part of their long game plan. Groups like CARE, the
Yeah.
Muslim-Brotherhood front group here, they've said within the next 2 elections, they're going to have Muslims running at every level of government, and they've gotten into the Congress, and they're going to keep growing from there. So that's why groups like yours are so vital and so important. Because for too long, I think we've ignored them as a threat. We said, no one's going to listen to them. But now they are. I mean, from the river to the sea. Yeah, 10 years ago, there was a stupid Mother Goose rhyme. From the river to the sea. Yeah. Now, though, everybody in Congress knows what that is. So that's what I'm saying. At this point, even the things that seem little, they're important that we defeat them.
It's shocking to me. And it seems like, it's like I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything. It does seem like all of a sudden there is like a wave of this to sort of take things over,
Right.
and it's and then you wonder also, I mean, another problem with these schools, of course, is the foreign funding. I mean, that's a humongous situation with Qatar.
Right.
And until I started doing this, I had no idea that that was a thing. That could places in these countries were giving, all of this money to our universities. And I don't really get why there hasn't been more of a clampdown on that. Like, why is that still, why are we taking money from Qatar? Why? I mean, I think that is a humongous problem. It's just, I don't know. And so many, I mean, look, so many of these problems are really over my capacity. I'm not, again, I was really, and I still am really like this ordinary person with an ordinary job, and I'm not, and I don't even know how to begin to tackle some of these issues because they're so systemic.
Yeah.
Also, I'm finding out that they've been going on for so long.
Correct.
I went to college in the 1980s. I only have one child, and he's in school now. So there was decades in there where college was not on my radar in any way. But then we have members who say, oh, that was going on in the 90s, and that was going on in the 2000s
Yeah.
and the 2010s. And it was, I didn't know because it wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
And it's so incredibly systemic and it's so despicable. And I don't know what will ever really end it. It feels like, we're chipping away. We do these little things and we have these little victories, but overall, it's going to take a lot more than my group or any of us to,
Well,
I don't,
yeah.
I mean,
Yes, and it's
no,
absolutely true. And listen, to me, this has been one of the biggest failings of the Jewish organizations. There are many of us, but they're all doing what they want. They're doing fundraising. They'll put out an email, a newsletter, condemn anti-Semitism, give us money so we can do our work. There has not been enough of a concerted effort for us to really tackle this problem head on. I'll give you another example. I remember um, before there was J Street, there was only APAC. Okay. So everyone thought that APAC was this all powerful organization and they can get anything through Congress. And then J Street came on board and people didn't take them seriously. And I said, you better take them seriously. And now, they are major, major players. And APAC, they lose a lot of battles. So to me, and I've had this conversation with people in Israel, until American Jews get their acts in order, for as far as I'm concerned, I think that we have let Israel down. Now, again, you have done a remarkable job. But listen, I'm just telling you, your group has done incredible work. You don't have to solve all the problems. But by your focusing on college anti-Semitism, that's your lane. The other
yeah,
lanes are other people's responsibilities. But between you and the Andrew Pessons and the Bill Ackmans, you hit them, like a football team. You've got a whole offensive line or a defensive line, and everyone's got their own lane. But that's how it gets done. And you're doing a remarkable job. So, with that, we got about a minute left. What do you see in the closing minute? Where is the future of MACA?
oh, that is such a good question. We have so many things that we want to do. One of the things we just started is we have a support group now because we have found that unfortunately, um, often Jewish kids go off to college and they begin to sympathize with the enemy. They
Right.
are, they're walking around, they're wearing keffiyehs, they go home, on breaks and they tell their parents, Israel's committing a genocide and free Palestine. And I've had this conversation with a lot of Jewish parents that this is an issue. Like, my kid was, I was talking to a guy in November whose child went all through yeshiva and everything and religious. They go away to college and they come home and it's like they're brainwashed. So we started this little, subgroup for support. We've got a lot of mental health professionals to help parents navigate this. And this is for the parents, not for the kids. It's for the parents to navigate this. I could think of several parents off the top of my head where this is an issue that their kid, they don't recognize their kids anymore. Um, it's it's horrible. That is a humongous problem that we have, this like dissonance where Jewish kids are now, they're sympathizing with this stuff. They're misguided. We want to help them. I want to do more. I want to be less online and more, Maccabees on the ground. I want to have more volunteers. I want to send more people out to these campuses. And I would like to get into much more lobbying. So we're a 501c3, and we can't, there's limits on what we could do. We can't be political. But I do think that it seems that very often there are these bills that go nowhere, like bipartisan legislation and against anti-Semitism, and they sort of sit, that they I don't know, there was like there've been so many of them, and they don't really go anywhere. And I really think we need to be much more, not just writing to school administrators, but to politicians, and to be actively, in a bipartisan way, to be actively out there writing and supporting politicians who support us. We need much stronger legislation to stop this. So that's something I really want to become more involved in, because I think we need real legislation. I also know there's a lot of lawsuits that go on, these Title VI things, and they seem to
Right.
drag on forever. I think we just need legislation that's stronger. There's got to be other avenues besides Title VI. So that's something I would really like to do, to start getting more involved in seeing some of these things get passed. And they just seem to, I don't know, they sit there, right? Um, what else? I don't know. I guess it depends how much money we can raise. We're also trying to do that right
So
now.
let me ask you a question now, since we're running towards the end of the clock. If somebody wants to join your group, do they go on Facebook and look up Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism? Is that the best way to do it?
That's why they do it, and there's some questions that they have to ask, and I have
Okay. Of
these moderators who are going to look at their profiles. We unfortunately, like every large group, have had people in there who shouldn't be in there.
course.
So now they're looking very carefully at everybody and kind of, I know they've had private conversations to see what they, if they were suspicious. So you can't just click a button, but you do need to just look us up, Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism, answer the questions, and you don't have to be Jewish, by the way, and you don't
Okay.
even have to be a mother. You could
Okay.
be anybody, as long as we have a lot of wonderful Christian allies in there.
Good for
Wonderful,
you.
and I love that, I
Yeah.
mean, because that it's so good when you see that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be anything, you just have to be an ally, support us, and we welcome you.
Terrific. Elizabeth Rand, one of America's top 50 Jewish influencers, founder of
Oh, good
it's
one.
great meeting you finally in person. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I look forward to seeing your work, as I'm also an active member of Mothers Against Anti-Semitism. Mothers Against
College emphasis,
Anti-Semitism.
college emphasis.
Okay. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.